Well, I think it's just about 2:05, so I think we're going to get started. And if anybody else wants to join, they can as we get going. And we are recording this, so we can always get them caught up for the few minutes they might miss. So, anyways, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Think to Ink Advances in Digital Color Proofing webinar that we're having today. Our session today is going to feature Dan Caldwell from the president of ICS, Vicki Blake, the vice president of business development. There we go. For ICS, Dan Gillespie, the director of technical services for Alder Color Solutions, and our certified color geek. And my name is Marty Davis. I'm the president of Alder Color Solutions. As we go into the presentation, we currently have all of the attendees on mute. So if you do have any questions or you need something clarified, please use the Q&A function that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. We'll moderate the Q&A after the presentation is over. And so we keep on schedule as much as possible, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Caldwell and let him kick off the presentation about advances in digital color proofing. Dan, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Marty. If I can just manage to get this screen moving. A little bit here on the agenda. What we're going to do today, we're going to introduce our companies, talk a little bit about our partnership and why we're together, and going to go through the history of color proofing and why every generation of new types of proofing is never good enough. We're going to talk about, and then Vicki's going to introduce hard copy versus digital and present a solution that we have to offer. So ICS is located here in Southern California. We have our core competency is in color. We've been delivering color management for many years. This is the second company that our technology has been involved in. We have support around the world in Asia, in Europe, and Latin America. Our staff of engineers is basically color engineers that we added a proofing system to our color technology instead of trying to add color technology to an existing proofing system. Alder's headquartered in Portland, Oregon, and they provide global support. They're a color IT company. Basically, if you have color issues, Alder can solve them for you. They can come in and make your profiles. They can set up new printers and get them running for you. They can make sure printers match press conditions. Anything that needs to be done in your color workflow, Alder's got the team to do it both remotely and on site. So they are a good source for training and getting your team up for color. So what we each bring to the table is kind of that background that I just explained. Our technology in software development, Alder's technology in software support and color training work together to provide a world-class proofing solution for anybody that needs to do it. Display proofing, just like paper proofing, requires color management and stability, and Alder can make sure that those standard practices and color solutions are in place. So before we dive into what we're offering, I'd like to kind of review of where we came from. Press proofs, laminate proofs, digital laminate proofs, inkjet proofs. This is kind of the history of it. I'd hate to say my career, but I did start in the 70s, so I've lived through all these changes. In the 70s, we had printing presses that actually used the plates that you were going to print with, and they were hand-fed presses, and we printed a bunch of yellow sheets, and then some magenta sheets, and then cyan, and so on, until we made what we called a progressive proof. A lot of the presses were two colors, so we made a magenta and yellow, or cyan and yellow, so that a pressman could have a two-color proof to go with it. It was a slow proofing process, and it was expensive. But even then, when we were actually printing with ink and paper, they would still say, well, this isn't the production run. When the press gets up to speed, it's going to be a little sharper or a little crisper. So even though it was a very accurate proof, it was not still a production run, and it was just a proof. Then we moved to laminate proofing, and these were your match prints, chromolins, even before that color key. And these were exposed color laminates that you exposed through your film and then put the next layer on and exposed it, etc., until you had a 4-color proof to send. Now, this was much faster than a press proof and more economic, but still expensive, and it still took time to make. And it used toner for color matching, so it wasn't quite as accurate as the press proof, but eventually people accepted it because it made color proofing fast and affordable. And so people started buying more color. And it wasn't long, I say not long, but it was probably in 5-7 years, press proofs went away and people were dependent on laminate proofs. In fact, many of you probably on this seminar never saw a press proof because laminate proofs are where most of us had entered the industry. Then came digital proofs. And this is because of CTP. When computer to plate technology eliminated film and we became all digital, we had to be able to proof those files without a piece of film. So Kodak had their approval system. I think Fuji had a final proof. And these were all digitally exposed laminates that still gave you a color proof with laminate materials. They were still the machines were expensive because it was laser exposure, et cetera. And they still took some time to make. And they still weren't as accurate as the old press proofs, but they were very good proofs. Then in the 2000s is where inkjet entered the market. And at first, inkjet got a bad name because the color was off compared to the digital proofs. Nobody wanted an inkjet proof, but it was lower cost paper, lower cost ink, very fast. And eventually, as color management matured, in the early 2000s, it became where you could control inkjets better than you could control digital proofs. And they actually became more accurate than the approvals or the final proofs. And so the color quality was there, but then the cry was, where's my dots? I need to see dots. If this is a color proof, I need to be able to put a glass on this proof and see the dots. So rip manufacturers went to a great deal of trouble to develop screen rendering technology for inkjets and just to give the customer dots because they wanted to see them. But what nobody realized is that the algorithms that put the dots on the inkjet were different algorithms that put the dots on the CTP. So it really wasn't the same anyway. And eventually the fear of dots went away and inkjet proofs became kind of the standard over the last decade. And then finally, soft proofing comes along, or monitor proof. Soft proof, I hate to say, because a PDF emailed to somebody is technically a soft proof. It's not a color accurate soft proof, but it's a soft proof. Monitor proof, the same thing. So they have lots of terminology for it. But if it's properly controlled and properly profiled, it's more accurate, it's very high quality, and it's very fast. Can always include the paper color, which many inkjets could not. So a little bit about this terminology. The contract proof is just that. That is the contract between the supplier and the printer. The vendor and the printer that says, this is proof I'm giving you that I signed off on, and it's our contract that you're going to reproduce a job that matches this proof. Hard copy proof, as we explained, that can be the historical ones, but most likely it's inkjet today. Remote proofing can be either soft or hard. So you can send a remote proof to a monitor if it's properly controlled, or some people put Epsons out in the field and they do remote proofing to Epsons to save the time of delivery. But it still has the costs of the ink, the paper, and the time it takes to color manage and calibrate and linearize the inkjet proofers at the remote sites. And now what we now call the digital color proof is a color accurate contract proof on a monitor. So with that, I'm going to let my colleague Vicky go into a little bit about the difference between hard and soft proofing and introduce our products. Take it away, Vicky.
Thank you, Dan. So as Dan mentioned, if you pass PDFs around, that's really a soft proof, if you will. So why are we saying digital color proofs are what you need to be doing? Well, if you need to see accurate color, then right now you go to a hard copy proof. But there are a lot of problems with that. Hard copy proofs are prone to error. They're very costly, not only equipment, ink, paper, maintenance, postage, but often they're overnighted. So you've got expediting as well, and they're not environmentally friendly. Next slide, please. But what's most important is everything we do today is digital. From think to ink, basically everything is a digital workflow, except for a hard copy proof. Once you print out an Epson and you send it to a facility or even perhaps someone's home and they mark it up with a Sharpie and send it back to you, you're breaking the digital workflow completely. And that causes a lot of issues. First of all, you have no way to know the color conditions under which that proof was created. That's why a lot of the prepress suppliers will put a little stamp with that information on it. Worst case, you're creating multiple copies and you have no version control. I spent a couple of years inside the Hershey company, and every single day I saw someone sitting there with a stack of proofs, and they would say, okay, wait a minute, is this the one after we asked them to warm up the Munsell maroon and the chocolate, or was it this one? So version control is a huge issue. Your comments and approvals must be compiled manually, and that's just, legwork and prone to error, and they must be archived physically on site, and they can fade with age. Not to mention enter COVID-19. In today's world, people are working from home. They have restricted travel. You can't huddle around the light booth with 4 people like you used to do and make a decision based on a proof of what action should happen next. And you certainly can't do live press approvals. So how do you approve color? Well, the solution is digital color proofing, of course. A proof arrives in minutes, time is saved, cost is reduced, and your communication is improved. But more importantly, that break in the digital workflow is healed, because we know that the single latest version of that proof is being served up to multiple people simultaneously, even if you like. You can refresh your screen and see a comment that somebody made a minute ago. Your color and viewing conditions are not only right, they're stored within the file, so you can check them and ensure that they're right. Your comments and sign-offs of all of your versions are automatically compiled for you, and everything's automatically archived. The approved file is immediately available to the printer for download, so errors are greatly reduced, and we like to say with a chuckle that digital proofs never fade. In addition, you can do some special things that you couldn't do before. For example, you can share digital drawdowns. If you want to see how an ink is going to print on a particular substrate, you can show that. You can also compare 2 different substrates, as you see in this illustration. You can also, early on in the design phase, you can actually say, gee, what if I use this spot color? What if I use that spot color? Can I see what each one would look like next to each other? And the same thing with paper. What if I printed on a different substrate, etc. So our solution is called Remote Director, and Remote Director is a verified, color accurate, monitor-based digital color proofing solution. That sounds like a lot. Basically, what that means is if you're invited to a digital color proof and you are a color critical approver, you're not the legal department or anyone, when you click the link in the email you got to open that proof, the first thing we do is our software goes out to your monitor and checks the calibration status. We see when it was calibrated last and if in fact it passed. If either of those are not true, what we do is throw this mask that you see across the screen, disable all the functionality except the calibrate button, and you are then forced to calibrate your monitor so that we know it is calibrated and it passed before we show you the color. That way we know that everybody's looking at the same color. We also support what we call hybrid proofing. Let's say you go through the whole workflow digitally and it ends up at the printer and he doesn't have a monitor on press. what he can do is actually utilize our software to send this file to a calibrated Epson, and we will then guarantee to render the color the same way on that Epson as we did on the screen. So a little bit about the solution itself. The heart of the solution is the proof server. And we mentioned that that serves everyone up the latest version of the file. Our particular SaaS solution is run on Amazon Web Services, and you can add SSL certification as well. So everything's very secure, which is important to the end users, the consumer product goods companies. You also have admin capabilities on that server, which means you can have your own user definable libraries of special spot colors, of special substrates, that we have all the Sappy papers in there, and we have all the Pantone colors in there. You can also customize the roles and permissions that you use in the workflow we're going to talk about on the next slide. Everything's easy and intuitive and cross-platform. From a workflow standpoint, you can basically set up any project routing you want using those roles and permissions that we talked about. You can send it to people simultaneously. You can send it one after another. You can give somebody 2 days, to look at it after someone else signed off on it. You can also have user definable work groups. That means any one of 3 people, can comment on this particular file. Everyone has a dashboard like you see here, a view of their project activity, which gives them a very quick ability to drill down and see what's late, as well as just what's on their plate. You can also add hot folder automation. And what this means is to create a proof, you need to set up all the color settings, the viewing conditions, you need to set up the project routing, who it goes to, the timing, and all of this stuff. You can put all that in a template, throw it in a hot folder, and then as PDFs are dropped into that, proofs are created, emails are sent to people automatically, and someone can click a link and look at it. We also do offer an SDK if someone wants to actually integrate with a workflow system. As Dan said, 18, 19 years ago, we started in the publications market, basically because a very large publisher realized how much money they were going to save by not receiving all these proofs and then not resorting them all, putting them in different boxes and sending them off to printers. So they held a meeting in New York and told all of their printers that a year from now, no one would ever get a hard copy proof again. Obviously, that gave them time to equip themselves with a solution, which pretty much turned out to be us. What's really funny is I believe it was only 3 months before they stopped sending any hard copy proofs at all, and they saved tons and tons of money. But for the last 10 years, we've been working more in the packaging industry because packaging has some special challenges. So because of that, we support Pantone, we support custom spot colors, as I mentioned before, we support PDFX file format and CXF file format. We support ICC profiles. We support extended color gamut. We're one of the few that will actually write the CXF data into the file as well as reading it. Your paper color selection is all user definable. You can have spot colors up to 24 channels in one project. And we offer a 3D view that allows you to show what light reflecting off of metallics and varnishes looks like. All of these things very necessary for packaging. As Dan mentioned, especially he, comes from the color background, as well as our colleagues at Alder. Because of that, we have a very comprehensive spectral blending engine, we call that, and that's what renders the accurate color. And it is the most accurate color that's available in the industry today. We also have our own monitor calibration and profiling software. That way you don't have to worry about this person's using an I1, this one's using a Spider, they're using different calibration software. Everybody's using all the same thing. The top 3 displays out there, which are NEC, BenQ, and AZO, we actually took their SDKs and we will calibrate those internally with their SDKs. So we have total control there. We'll calibrate any display though, and we do that through the GPU. Also, because of the gaming industry, the GPUs are so powerful now, we do our color rendering on the GPU, not on the server. And what that means is, it's very dynamic and very fast to say, change that to a different spot color. It also means you don't have to create a whole nother proof with the other spot color in it, which greatly reduces your server hardware requirements. We control the ambient light in both UST and GTI light booths, and we are color accurate even cross-platform. So what are the benefits of all of this to you? Well, speed obviously is the first one. And we all know at the end of the day, what the consumer product goods company cares about is getting their product to market faster. When you can approve and annotate a proof this quickly, you can help them do that. It also improves your supplier and vendor communication. We save a lot of cost. We do like to point out though, and I think Dan kind of alluded to this earlier, that it takes the same color knowledge and the same hoops to jump through to create a digital proof as it does a hard copy proof. So these things should be charged for, but what you can save yourself and the customer is your paper, your ink, your postage, and your FedEx charges when you have to overnight them. Also, we believe all the reduced errors saves additional cost as well. This is the highest quality proof. As Dan said, all the proofs people were leery of them at first, but this is the highest quality proof that you can get in the industry today as well. The printer has the most accurate target he can get, which includes substrate color, and it will never fade. And it's also environmentally responsible. So in summary, you can actually, for once in your life, get it faster, cheaper, and better, and green by using today's proofing method versus yesterday's. So we've got a little case study. One of the shifts that we've seen is that we've traditionally worked up and down the supply chain with printers and graphics providers, et cetera. But CPGs are now looking for solutions like this, which solves what Dan used to call the marriage problem. Well, my customer isn't asking for it. They are asking for it. And they're asking us what suppliers have them as well. So we met a CPG called Harry's about a year ago, and they came to us because of COVID and people working at home, they, instead of sending one proof to the office, they were having to send multiple proofs to different people's houses. And all of a sudden they were incurring a lot of additional cost, and they wanted to eliminate that cost. That was their first goal. But as they started to explore Remote Director, they realized that there was a lot more time and money that could be saved, even inside their own internal workflows, as well as with their supply chain. So they spent a couple of months exploring, testing, looking at hardware, proving to everyone involved that our color matched really, really well, as he always put it. And in August, they actually installed their system. For about the first 3 to 4 months, they just used it internally to make sure it was, running very, very smoothly. Then they started rolling it out to their pre-press suppliers because they wanted the whole supply chain on it. And I think at this stage we're about, I think we just onboarded one new printer for them, but they pretty much got it in use. And they told us the other day while we were on with this printer just last week that they haven't even seen a hard copy proof in over 6 months. And they couldn't be more pleased. So they agreed in December to do, give us, kind of an interview for a press release for us. I won't bore you with reading it, but we were quite thrilled. Basically, they were talking about how great it was, how much time and money it was saving them. Things that happened in weeks now happen in days. Things that happen in days now happen in hours. And there's a link actually in this presentation where you can read the whole press release on our website. Having seen that, we decided to check in with some older clients. So these are 2 clients that are publication folks in the UK that have had our system in for at least 15 years. And this particular link will take you to just a little Q&A with each of them, the Bauer Media Group and DMG, who publishes the Daily Mail. But basically, they still enjoy the benefits. They are so happy that they've had it for 15 years. And they said, thank goodness it was in place before COVID hit, because really that didn't make any difference in the way we worked. So basically what we're telling you is this is proofing of yesterday, and this is digital color proofing is the proofing of today. The next wave in that history. And now I think we're ready for Q&A. And I believe, again, use the Q&A chat window on the far right at the bottom of your screen, and please ask any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Dan, Gillespie, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this. If anybody has any questions, we can answer those now.
Yeah, there's a question in here that says, what is a spectral engine and why is it beneficial?
Well, for those of you who are aware of how color management works today with ICC profiles, we take a ICC profile of the source, the scanner or the camera, and we go through what's called a PCS, which is a profile connection space, and we marry that to the ICC profile of the output device. And the profile connection space in ICC world is LAB. So we convert source to LAB, match it to the LAB of the destination, and then we go to the destination color space. Works pretty well for CMYK, but once you start getting into spot colors and blended, we found LAB inadequate. So our spectral blending engine is basically a profile connection space that runs spectrally and it's fed with spectral data. So we always use spectral. We convert ICC profiles to spectral profiles. We convert all spot colors to spectral data instead of LAB colors. And we do the blending in the spectral engine before we render it back out to the device display RGB or printer CMYK.
I think that was pretty complete. I would also add that, in a Pantone library, let's say, all the colors are just defined as a solid color and they're defined as an LAB value. And you have the ability to create a spectral definition of a particular spot color on a particular machine. And you can actually not only interpret that in Remote Director, but you can export a PDF with that information embedded in the PDF. So both powerful for incoming and outgoing files. Next question is, what is CXF?
CXF is a color measurement. When you measure a color with a spectrophotometer, it gives you a file. That file used to be stored basically as a spreadsheet, so you could see every measurement of every bandwidth of color. CIE and CCIE had a format that you could open up with Excel, and you could play with these spreadsheets and average them together, etc. But it became cumbersome. So Graytag, before or about the time X-Ray bought them, somewhere in that neighborhood, they came up with this CXF, which is color exchange format. And they basically put it into public domain. And so now it is a publicly accessible format to describe a color. And a CXF can contain just LAB values or can contain spectral values. So it's just a carrier for color data. And it's become the way that someone can measure a color on their press or in their system and hand it to a proofing system, and we can understand that color. Also, CXF can describe not just a single measurement of a color. You can bring in 11 or 22 measurements of a color. To get the best description of a spot, you want to measure the solid down the ramp all the way to the white point of the paper, and then that same ramp over top of black, you want to measure from the solid to the white point. Those 22 measurements give you the ink, how it lays down, if it's linear from 100 to 0, and also the opacity because you have it over black and over white. That is the best description of a color that we can get. We interpolate that with our spectral blending engine, but the most precise proof is one that has those measurements of every color.
Great, thank you. That's a great explanation. Anything else?
Next question, is there a trial version available?
Vic?
Yes, we do offer 30-day trials. One of the things you'll need to do is equip yourself with the proper hardware in order to run that trial. But several people have done this, and they, like I said, there's always a couple that have to be convinced that this is going to be accurate, but we certainly will allow you to play with it. You can do that on, we actually have two business models. One is we have a SaaS server that I mentioned on Amazon Web Services, and we sell subscriptions to that SaaS server. So that's where we're going to let you do a trial, or you can purchase your own hardware solution, or excuse me, purchase your own software to run on either a hardware box of yours or an Amazon, spin up an Amazon virtual instance as well. And there are a lot of advantages should you choose to purchase the software yourself and run it on your own server, in that one, you're purchasing it, so you don't pay the same fee every year, which means in year 3, you start saving money because you just go on maintenance. Also, if you have your own server, it allows you to have your own custom spot color libraries, have your own substrate libraries, and you can even customize the roles and permissions that you use in setting up your workflows. And you can add the hot folder automation.
Great. And the hardware required for this does include a proof station and the monitor, CPU. What all is required for both for a kind of a hub and spoke environment, or like a Harry's where they have the press check and the proof check?
Yes, well, Harry's has asked all of their suppliers to equip themselves with hardware. And then what they're doing is we work on, I'm going to digress just a little bit here, Marty, but we work on what we
That's
call
all right.
a concurrent user model. That means a typical starting point is 5 concurrent users. So if you have a 5 concurrent user model, you can invite as many people to look at proofs as you want, but only 5 of them can be accessing your server at any given moment. The 6th person gets a busy signal until somebody else logs out. So basically what somebody like Harry's did is they purchased the software, and then they ask all of their suppliers to equip themselves with the hardware, which I'll get back to answering your question in a minute. And then when they're viewing a proof, they're actually using one of Harry's concurrent users at that moment. So, and the hardware that you need, if you want to see everything totally accurately, you're going to need a monitor that can be calibrated and can pass. You're going to need a light booth so you can control the ambient lighting. You're going to need a measuring device so that you can go in and actually hang it and do the calibration. And you're going to need some kind of a CPU to drive all that. So, and we are actually going to be announcing some products in our next session next week, which make it really easy to equip yourselves should you need to.
Great, kind of a turnkey solution.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. COVID brought up the need for that. And the 2 companies that are presenting here today is solving that need.
A couple of
And just so everybody's aware, we are actually putting together a live demo facility. There'll be actually a proof check, press check, and a hard copy proof at 2 different locations. An Epson with a remote director set up at both in Tennessee and then all the way over into Portland, and people will be able to see it. We'll be filming this also and have live demos so people can actually see how the process works and how accurate it really is by being able to live look at a hard copy proof, what I would call a hard copy proof, in the fact of an Epson right next to the monitor, next to the press sheet, with the measurement tools right there. So look for that coming in the next couple of weeks. If there's no other questions, we're barreling down on wrapping up. So what I want to do is I want to thank everyone for their time today. I hope you found it both entertaining and informative. We are recording this, as I said, and if you want all of our contact information is there. You could send us a link, or you can send us an email. We'll send you the link to the video so you can review it at a later date if you want. And then don't forget that next week we are doing a follow-up webinar for the color proofing in your workflow and at your press. And that will be going in a little bit more detail of the actual process of the actual remote director and proof check and press check. So with that, then thank everybody, thank our panelists, and hopefully this was good for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.